During a speech at a Turning Point USA event over the weekend, Matt Gaetz, well known for his possible involvement in a sex trafficking situation, said that Mike Pence is never going to become president. Of course, ever since Mike Pence didn't go along with Donald Trump's attempt to overturn the election results, a lot of people in kind of the MAGA movement have turned on Pence, even though he was loyal to Trump each step of the way until then. And Matt Gaetz is going along with that and saying, listen, Pence, one thing I know for sure, he's never going to be president, which is probably, that's a fine thing to say. It's true. Pence is probably never going to be president. But it was really, really interesting because that clip of Matt Gaetz was played and on a TV program, and Marc Short, who was Mike Pence's chief of staff, so Mike Pence loyalist presumably, had to respond to it. They played the clip for him to respond to, and he had just the best, most slam dunk response to Matt Gaetz. Let's take a look.
On that note, let me just say what everybody here knows. Mike Pence will never be president. Nice guy, not a leader.
Marc?
Well, I don't know if Mike Pence will run for president in 2024, but I don't think Matt Gaetz will have an impact on that. In fact, I'd be surprised if he was still voting. It's more likely he'll be in prison for child sex trafficking by 2024. And I'm actually surprised that Florida law enforcement still allows him to speak to teenage conferences like that. So I'm not too worried about Matt Gaetz. Thanks.
Ooh, hit him right in the gut. True. I don't think we should care too much about what Matt Gaetz says, and there is a good chance, based on the investigations into him right now, that he possibly won't be able to vote in 2024. It is very confusing that it has taken so long for any more progress publicly to be announced on this investigation, but we know a lot came out. The guy who was super, super close to Matt Gaetz giving up a lot of information into the possible underage sex trafficking that Matt Gaetz did. So, bad guy. Obviously, that's still technically all alleged, so we don't know for sure. But regardless of that, Matt Gaetz seems like a pretty bad guy. So watching someone who is, even though Marc Short and I aren't going to necessarily get along, he's probably a lifelong Republican. I get along with lots of Republicans, but I'm saying in our policies, we're not going to get along. But watching him slam dunk like that on Matt Gaetz and saying, listen, before I even get to your question, because I don't even know if Mike Pence is going to run, let me just say, I don't care what Matt Gaetz has to say, which I think every time Matt Gaetz talks, tweets, whatever, we should be reminding him of the fact that we don't care what you have to say, alleged sex trafficker. Good stuff. But to the point of Mike Pence possibly running for president and possibly having a chance, just to quickly look at recent polling on that, based on the compilation of multiple polls, this one, when you include Trump in the running, you have Pence at close to 10% of the vote, Trump's at 53%, DeSantis is at 24%, and Pence is at 9.7%, it's almost 10%. So yeah, that's not great. I don't think he has a chance of beating Trump or DeSantis at all. I think the Republican Party has moved too much in the direction of Trump, of all of those lies that he's telling, that someone like Pence, who even though he's super conservative, super right-wing, has at least enough of a moral bone in his body to recognize whenever an election doesn't go his way, and recognize whenever such a blatant lie as the ones Trump was telling about the election is just that. So I think the fact that he went against Trump in all the 2020 stuff is going to tank his chances of any possible run, just kind of as a second thing, or he could run, but a possible victory. When you take Trump out of the running, let's say he decides not to, DeSantis is now at 38% and Pence is at 14.5%. So let's say 38% to 15% with Pence as the second place option. So 15% before you've even announced is not bad. You can make a lot of ground off of that, especially when there are a lot of Republican options being floated. But I don't think he would have a chance if DeSantis tried to run. And so we're in an interesting moment where it looks like over half of the Republican Party is no longer on board with Trump. But that doesn't mean they want someone like Pence, who represents a little bit more of the old guard Republican. They might want someone who is unhinged enough, like DeSantis, who can really score those seriously right-wing victories. Even though, again, Pence would do a lot of really conservative stuff, I think he has lost their favor because he didn't want to overturn the 2020 election. So that's just kind of a little side note, because the two kind of were beefing over the possibility of Mike Pence running, but I don't think he has a good chance. I still love seeing Matt Gaetz dunked on, though.